Hey there guys and gals, it's me nirex and welcome to a brand new video series, tutorial series, all about our favorite engine, the Unreal Engine. Okay, so as any good C++ developer should know, or any developer at all, languages have different purposes, right? And you know, if you want to do anything special with the C++ that you're learning, you can do it, but there are specific languages for specific tasks. Okay, so we have, for instance, Golang for server design. We have ASP.NET or Java EE or J2EE, whatever you want to call it, for creating web frameworks and doing stuff like that. Now you can do all those things with C++, but we don't usually do that. We usually put those tasks for their own good languages. All right, but there's a thing that C++ can do and no other language can. I mean, they can, but they can't really perform that task as good as this guy does, and that's creating games. Now, the dream of every C++ developer should be to create a game engine for themselves. Well, maybe not the dream, but the goal. And since we already have one here, I thought, why not make a video series on this guy right here, the Unreal Engine. Okay, so first off, let's just, put that stuff out of the way, and then we'll just delve into the introduction of this whole series. Alright. So before we begin, let me just give you some notes about the version of the engine that I use. It's 420, because 420. And the type of the engine is, I compiled it from the source code myself because I downloaded it twice, two different versions, and it kept crashing. So I decided to compile it myself, based on the configuration of my own system, of my own operating system, all that good stuff. And so it worked better. There were no more crashes. So I compiled it from the source code. If you have no issues using the pre-compiled version, you can use that. You can feel free to do whatever you want to do. But yeah, I'm going to use this guy right here. Okay, so before we go any further, let's just right now delve into the entirety of what this course is all about, what this series is all about. All right. So first off, let's start with this guy right here, the C++ versus Blueprint. Then we'll see what the problem is, and then we will talk about the approach that I'm going to take. Okay, so first off, C++ versus Blueprints. Now, I do assume you have some prior knowledge about Unreal Engine. Well, if you don't, no worries, but it's better if you do. So blueprints are a very basic system. They're like flowcharts. They can, you can connect things together, and they work like that. All right, but I just am going to assume that you know what these are because there are tons of tutorials on these guys right here. But yeah, let's go on. All right. So there are some pros to using C++ and some cons, but we'll just go one at a time. So let's talk about the speed. Well, the speed of execution doesn't really differ between C++ and Blueprints because, at the end they're all compiled and they give you the same result. But the speed at which you create the system, the speed at which you design the system, differs greatly. C++ is super fast compared to Blueprints because you have to connect things, you have to, just make an entire section just for a simple if statement. It's just super slow compared to how you could write code in C++. So yeah, it's pretty painful in terms of speed. Ease of use. Blueprints are super easy to use. C++ is a pain in almost everywhere in your body you can think of. Okay. So yeah, ease of use, definitely this guy wins in this case. Blueprints are super simple. C++ is extremely difficult with Unreal Engine. But don't worry, with my approach, yeah, don't worry about it. Okay, so we have tutorials. There are tons and tons of good tutorials on blueprints, and there are some good tutorials. See, they're either too basic or too advanced. Like, let's create some mega server with C++ Unreal Engine. Alright, so they're either like that or they're like how to do 2 plus 2 in Unreal C++. So they're either too simple or too complex, except one, which I will talk about here. But yeah, the tutorials on blueprints definitely win, and the flexibility. They both have the same amount of flexibility, but I'd still say C++ is a bit more flexible because you can, write libraries with other languages or whatever you want to do, and then migrate them into your Unreal Engine. So if you need anything that's not in Unreal Engine, you could just make it and bring it in. Okay, you can do that with C++, but you can't really do it with blueprints. You could create blueprint libraries, but yeah, you got to do that with C++. So C++ definitely wins in flexibility. Okay, so C++, blueprints, C++, definitely even. Anyhow, so this is the simple and basic core idea of these two guys. Now let's talk about the actual problem that we have with Unreal C++ and why it's assumed to be very hard. Okay, so there are three main reasons that it's considered to be hard. Number one is that there is not so much of a beginner-friendly documentation in C++. They don't really have a beginner-friendly documentation. Their documentation is not bad, but what the hell? This is supposed to... Yeah, thank you. Their documentation is not bad, but it's not good either. It's okay. If you go to Unity and try to, learn Unity, their videos and tutorials and documentations, it's just top notch. It's amazing. My first approach to this problem was to teach you everything in Unity and C#, and then migrate them into blueprints and eventually C++, but that would make things a bit too complicated, overtly complicated. We don't need to do that. So, or rather overcomplicated, not overtly, and yes, overtly and overcomplicated. So yeah, so we're not going to do that. We're just going to go the simple way, the easy way, the easier way rather. No, they're not easy, they're just easier and harder. Okay, so not so much of a beginner-friendly documentation. The documentation is good, but it's not beginner-friendly. It's hard to understand anything. In their documentation tutorial they say that you just need a little bit of C++ knowledge, but they're definitely lying. You need a whole bunch of C++ knowledge and knowledge to read documentations. Okay, problem number two, or reason number two, is that not so many good C++ tutorials out there. There just aren't. Well, except one guy who is named Ruben Ward. He makes pretty goddamn good tutorials, but there's an issue with his tutorials. I mean, there are other guys out there, definitely, but I really haven't checked anyone out except this guy, and he makes amazing tutorials, but the issue is that he doesn't finish his series. He never finishes his courses. I don't know. I mean, he's teaching to a good extent, but he never finishes them. But it's okay. If you want to have a head start, go watch his tutorials. They're absolutely amazing. They teach you a lot. Okay, and the reason number three why it's pretty hard is because it's written in C++, and C++ is goddamn hard. Okay, so these were the three main reasons why we have a problem with this guy, with the Unreal C++. Now let's see how we're going to go ahead and look at our approach. Okay, so first off we're going to use layering. I don't know why I put that in the top. Should have been in the bottom. I will just put it there. I'll talk about it just after these two. Alright, so we're going to actually learn how we can do things in Blueprint and then replicate them in C++. Okay, so we're going to look at the blueprints, we're going to do stuff in blueprints, and then replicate them entirely in C++. Okay, so you can see how blueprints are connected to C++. That way you don't need to learn absolutely everything from this video. You can just learn it all you want from the blueprint itself. You can explore, you can learn, trial and error, just go with your guts. So this is the easy part, but there is also a harder part, or the less easy part, which is replicating the engine in C++. Okay, so blueprints give you some logical functions and some things, some functionality to create logic for your game, which is okay, all good and dandy, but we also have something else. Okay, so engine itself also gives you some functionality which you can include in your code. So you can code that functionality instead of just setting it in the engine. Doing the engine is going the easy way, and we programmers, we don't go the easy way. That's for designer guys, and we're not designers, we're engineers. So yeah, we are going to replicate the blueprints, just copy everything in the blueprints and translate them into C++, which is going to be easy, and then we're going to replicate engine stuff into C++. They're basically the same thing, but this guy actually has some API calls and some function calls that you have to memorize the name of, so yeah. But this guy is just for writing logic, so they're kind of interconnected. I just separated them just to give you a clearer idea, or a more clear idea. And then we're gonna do the layering. So the layering approach, I don't know what that's called. I call it layering because we turn our problems into layers. So there's layer 1, then there's layer 2. So in layer 1 we fix issue 1. If issue 1 is fixed, then we go to issue 2. If it's fixed, we go to issue 3, or rather fix or do. Alright? Doesn't really have to be a problem to be fixed, so we just do issue 1. Alright, there's something that we need to do. We don't know how to do it, but we know the steps to take to get to that point. Like, how do you make an attack? Alright, in order to make the character shoot with the mouse button 1, we need to first assign mouse button to shoot, then give it an event, then do some raycasting. So these are all the steps that we need to take, and layering basically means we're going to go step by step and take it easy and simple, just to learn absolutely everything there is to learn in every single issue. And don't worry, there are some things that you need to memorize, but it doesn't really get anywhere out of there. Alright, so it's just, I don't know, like 10-20 things that you need to memorize, and then the rest are just, they're either in blueprints, you can find them in blueprints, or you don't really need to use them that much. So the couple of things that are very important are timers. They are timers are important. What more? Raycasting, of course, this is pretty important. Overlapping and collision detection, that's pretty important. And so yeah, we're going to talk about the concepts and the coding behind them, all of them. And yeah, don't worry if you don't understand them at first. Just rewatch the videos 2 or 3 times. You will eventually get it. Don't worry about it at all. And hopefully one day you will be able to actually create your own 3D engine entirely with C++, maybe with Direct 3D, maybe with OpenGL. Just do what you do, make it simple, make it easy, and put these things like raycasting and collision detection and all that good stuff in your own engine, so that you could have a deeper intuition into how they work. But for now, we're not going to create them. We're just going to use what's been created for us by the amazing team of Unreal Engine. And yeah, quick note, PS, a lot of people seem to think that I've seen, in comments all around, seem to think that Unreal is, it has a bad design, or it's pretty goddamn bad, or I don't know, the documentation isn't good, or the tutorials are bad. Well, the C++ tutorials are pretty bad. Okay, they're absolutely garbage. Well, at least the beginner ones, the one that the instructor just copies and pastes things without explaining anything. That's not good. But the documentation is not bad. It's just not beginner friendly. It's not garbage. It's just not beginner friendly. That's why so many people have problems with it. But we don't really give a damn about the documentation. We're not gonna follow the documentation. We're gonna do our own way, our own approach. And yeah, so one more thing to note. My engine is 420. You can feel free to download anything else you want, any other version, and just compile it. There are guides out there telling you how to compile your own engine version. You gotta join their group in GitHub, their organization. Then you gotta download the source of the engine. Then you gotta run a file, download the dependencies, open the file up in your Visual Studio, and then just compile it. Simple and easy as that. It's gonna take a little bit of time, but it will compile pretty good. And yes, my suggestion is that you download the source code and compile it from the bones, actually, and don't get the pre-compiled version. It might crash. There's a high chance that it will crash. At least for me it was. Anyhow, guys, that's been it for this video. Sorry if it was quiet. It's pretty goddamn late and I'm pretty goddamn tired, so excuse me for that. And yeah, that's it, guys, for this video. If you enjoyed, do leave a like, and if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like this one, I mean, not that this one had a bunch of content, it had nothing, it was just an introduction. But yeah, if you want to see more of this series, do subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate it. And thanks for watching. See you in the next one.